So, hi Enrique, how are you?
I'm good, Camila. How are you?
Fine. We can skip this part. I'm just gonna put it in there.
Okay. Awesome.
So, first question: what is your background with the Grease Lightning Robotics team?
So, my background in the team is I've always heard about it through mutual friends. I had a Miss Ashley, the teacher in charge of the team. I had her as my physics teacher, so she would always have the members in there, and I got to see the robot once in a while. So I was always curious about it. And then in my programming class, the programming person on the team would always come with the robot. So I was always interested in it. And senior year of high school, I finally got around to joining. And so from there on, I just got really active, got really involved, had a lot of fun with it, programmed a bunch. That's the background.
And you became an officer, right?
Yeah, I became an officer a few months after joining because some other people were having trouble keeping up with work.
Yeah. So, my second question is: what kind of text do you recall being used on the team?
There were a lot of texts
Yeah.
used in the team. So that's obviously, written text to document things. We had specifically a thing called an engineering book, which was a really massive binder full of basically all documentation of the club. Anything from engineering logs to programming logs to daily reports on how everything went down. It was a lot of keeping records of things so later on if we needed to refer back to something we had it available. So yeah, there was a lot of writing material that we had to go through, especially explaining our design process and explaining how and why we made certain decisions with the robot, with the code, with the team as a whole. So yeah, there was definitely a lot of writing involved, keeping records and stuff like that.
We also use WhatsApp groups and stuff, right?
So we communicated through WhatsApp group chats, and everybody communicated through there. People were able to ask questions, and they were able to ask questions at any time of day. So that was very good for communication. And then if there was big announcements that needed to be made, we also had a Remind, which is this app which the person who's in charge of the Remind can instantly send out a notification to everyone's phone on the team. So that's how we were able to transmit those important pieces of information to the whole team.
Okay. Do you remember any particular example that stuck out to you about a time where the text was really useful on the team, to achieve something?
So definitely when there was a lot of discussing the design of the components, the physical components of the robot that we would put in, and oftentimes, not everybody would be up to date on what was talked at a certain meeting because not everyone can attend. So it was good to have those written records always because we could just have people missed out on those, read up on the records, what designs were created, and if we ever wanted to go back and see what reasons we had for creating a certain component of the robot the way we did, we always had a reference back to the logistics behind it. So it was very, very good in keep maintaining information.
Yeah. Okay. So another question is, what functions do you recall those texts accomplishing on the team? I know you already said some of them, but let's just elaborate on most of them.
If there's others,
No, those texts. What do you think were the primary functions that they accomplished on the team?
the written records,
Yeah,
or
or
just
the
anything, just any writing.
Yeah, any writing counts, including.
Proper communication, getting the information around the team, which is the single most important thing on the team, because if the team members weren't able to communicate properly, no club organization can function. So definitely keeping communication as strong as we could was a major part in why we wanted to keep all these written records. So communication was a reason, yeah, it's just communication. Communication, I always talked about that, how like communication is like the most important thing to keep everything running smoothly.
What type of text do you consider was the most important for the operation of the club?
The group chats that we mentioned were very important, because oftentimes some certain announcements wouldn't be very clear on things, Sometimes people needed very specific information on specific things, which only one or two people knew. So being able to communicate through those group chats were the most important pieces of text that we had.
Really? So you think those were more important than the code itself?
Surprisingly, yes. The code, obviously, it's a big part, it's a massive part of the program.
It's the program.
It runs the robot, The engineering logs are very important, but none of those two things, or really anything in that matter, would have been able to be accomplished if it weren't for proper communication, But close second, we would have those programs, those engineering logs. Yeah, communication is number one.
Okay. And since you said you were one of the only people in charge of coding the robot, right?
Yes, that is true.
We helped you a lot, remember?
You did, yeah.
I don't think so. Do you believe that you could relate the coding to, like the coding to other text using the cloud?
What do you mean by that?
I mean, like, draw similarities between what the coding is doing to what other types of texts are doing in the cloud.
So, code at the end of the day, code is just giving instructions, to this robot thing, this metal moving thing. So, just like anything else that we build and create, there's a lot that goes into it, and there's not just one way of making it. So it's a very creative process, coding the robot. You have to be able to communicate amongst team members, when you're creating the code. So you have to be commenting your code, making notes of why this is here, how it works, and all these things.
Yeah. What kind of emails do you remember being written on the club, if any?
Usually a lot of the emails were used for communication with outside companies or organizations. As a club, we were required to fundraise money, and so that involved a lot of community service work, other things. So usually anything that required us to communicate with other parties that wasn't within the club, we usually did through emails.
Yeah. And the WhatsApp group chats were used to communicate in between members, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So just the last question. In what ways do you remember text helping you and the team to accomplish stuff?
Communication.
Communication.
I mean, in what?
Yeah, communication is a good.
Yeah, I could go on for days about communication, because really after working for so long in that club and also some other clubs, I've seen without communication, nothing gets done, So being able to keep those records is very important. Being able to express your ideas and keep those tabs, on what we do is very essential, Being able to properly express yourself and having everyone creatively write up these descriptions of their ideas and the concepts that they want to create is a very important part of, the robotics club functioning, as well as, implementing the design process and creating the robot.
These tags or WhatsApp groups also help the team by helping us set up the meeting times and stuff like that, right?
Yes. We coordinated, meeting times, event planning. We did all through there. We did a lot. Yeah.
So basically, without the text, the robotics team wouldn't be able to operate, right?
Oh, absolutely. You know,
Like,
without
any
all
organization.
without all the forms of text that we had, you know, whether it was like communication or like record keeping, any of that, you know, emails. If we didn't have any one of those, the club would not have been able to operate at all. They were essential to the function of the club.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I think that those are all the questions.
Awesome.
I'll see you the next time.
All right. Have a good one.